Hello. So this time around, I'm going to be doing a video defending Sam Peckinpah, one of my favorite directors. A director who created slow motion, first used it in The Wild Bunch. His films have been, I think, fairly accurately described as bullet ballets. Now, let me start with the man himself before I get to his oeuvre, his pantheon of films. So, he was a very troubled person. He fought in World War II, and where the idea for slow motion came from was, I think it was his best friend was beside him, and he got shot. He was watching his friend fall to the ground, and it was like time slowed. So that's why he has all these great scenes of shootouts where like it'll be going like from one shot to another, to another, to another, but in between I'll be cutting to one guy like falling in slow motion. Like it's done just so brilliantly. But Peckinpah was he was a very hardcore alcoholic. Like I've seen an interview with him on BBC where he's just got this big bottle of like whiskey or bourbon or something, and he's getting progressively drunker during the interview to the point where he's swearing on live TV. But they called him Bloody Sam for a reason, because he was notoriously difficult to work with. It was in his contract that he would not make a film unless he was drunk. He broke the noses of several producers, straight up clocked them. He had a weird obsession with mirrors and guns, to the point where he would get drunk and shoot out all the mirrors with a 12 gauge in his house. I see a lot of parallels between him and Ernest Hemingway. Because they were both motivated to include the violence and the grim realities of stuff like war in their films, because they wanted people to see it and be like, this is really actually awful. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this to each other. The reason The Wild Bunch was my favorite Western is because I think it was his way of killing the genre. Like, for one, it's happening at the end of the Wild Frontier. World War I is basically starting, and that's why all the main characters have 1911s, and the characters in his films are not meant to be people you look up to. They're not meant to be idolized. I believe he said that within every man is an animal, and that's what he's trying to illustrate with his films. And he, I think, became deeply depressed when he realized that people were enjoying the violence in his film. I'm not gonna lie, I love his shootout scenes. They are brilliant. But they really do illustrate the worst of violence and its toll on humanity. But seeing people cheer for it, I think, destroyed him. He became heavily addicted to cocaine in his 50s, to the point where they couldn't get him out of his trailer because he was just fucking doing blow all day. And eventually he was blacklisted from Hollywood. He tried to make a couple non-violent films, but no one seemed to watch them. So he teamed up with, I believe, the Mexican government to film Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which is one of my favorite Peckinpah films. It's completely ruthless. It's got the Peckinpah misogyny in it. I don't think he was necessarily a misogynistic person, but there's always women getting punched, shot, raped. But it was his way of going like, this is just male aggression for you. These are regressive males in their worst form. Not, this is a good thing, this is permissible, you should do this kind of thing. But with Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, I think Warren Oates' character is Peckinpah. He's a drunk who served in the army and knows his way around in 1911, and falls in love with a Mexican prostitute. I actually saw a documentary on Sam Peckinpah where it was interviewing the woman who played the prostitute he's in love with, and these are not my words, these are hers. First thing she says, yeah, I think Peckinpah was a fag. He was all about these like men that are all macho without their shirts on, you know, like. But you know, so many of his films are just gems. Like, I haven't seen all of them, but like The Getaway, tremendous movie. Just got a copy of it. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, as I said, that's another favorite. It's definitely his most personal film from what I can see. You know, a lot of people, I think, question the motivations of Warren Oates' character because, you know, like, there's all these times where he could just, like, finish the job, but he just has to kill everyone. But I think it's because his character has a death wish in it after a certain thing happens, which I won't spoil for you. You know, you can watch the whole movie on YouTube. Like, I'm a fan of Straw Dogs. Do I enjoy watching it? I like the final siege scene, but holy cow, is like the rape scene in that brutal, and its implications pissed a lot of people off because it was kind of going, oh, see, she's enjoying it. Oh, she didn't tell her husband about it. But the thing is, like, you know, it was displaying, oh, this is what trauma looks like. This is what trauma does to people. Not, oh, women are just inherently promiscuous and will enjoy being violated. I don't see that at all in what he's saying in that movie. And like, the movie itself, it's very different than the short story, which, you know, I read, and as Peckinpah said, it's just it's not great. It's nothing special. Like, it's about what happens when you take a man who's very meek and very, you know, like, unassertive, and you push him to the brink, to a boiling point, and he boils over, and, you know, it leads to this great siege, this violent siege, where it's just him against, like, an entire town of complete lunatics and drunks. You know, it includes using bear traps as a weapon, boiling oil, like a fire poker, you know, just anything he can get. Like, there's a part where a guy sneaks through this broken window, and he grabs him, and he, like, wraps copper wire around his neck. The guy's like, no, you can't leave me here. I'll cut myself. I'll die here. And he's like, I hope you cut your fucking throat. And it's just like full on brutalized. And it ends with him kind of self-actualizing, because you know, he's driving, and, you know, the guy who he was protecting that started all of this goes, I don't know where my home is, and he goes, I don't know either. So, you know, but he smiles, so he realizes that he's changed now forever. I would have bought Straw Dogs because that's the only Criterion version of a Peckinpah film as far as I know, but it's just not something I can watch with other people, you know. Yeah, I mean, The Getaway was definitely his most commercial film. As I said, The Wild Bunch was just great. Like, I love how in The Wild Bunch, the only character who's not a complete scumbag is the indigenous Mexican member of their group, and hey there. Hi, how you doing? Yeah, go ahead, do your thing. But yeah, and it's also like his people in the film who are the only ones able to get a jump on the quote-unquote wild bunch, the main characters. Other than that, no one can hold a candle to them. Like the guy's old stomping or roaming buddy, like he's being tasked by the railroad companies to essentially assassinate him, and he just is bungling it up every step of the way. And like, they just with ease steal tons of arms from the American military. And I love how it shows just how corrupt like this Mexican general was during I believe this was the war where like Juarez had tried to sell part of Mexico to America, and the Mexican government was just like, no, we're not having that, and this caused kind of an internal civil war. And then also the Americans were coming in as well. I could be wrong about that, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, that's a really tremendous movie. And honestly, my favorite of his, even though people have been very critical of it and say it's like messy and stuff, because Peckinpah was probably at his worst, his lowest point when this happened, or when this film was shot. But it is very interesting because, for one, he's Jewish. He defends the state of Israel, talks about how his people are being persecuted. But this film is from the perspective of these German soldiers who are at the very tail end of the war, and they have nothing left to defend themselves from the Russians. So they're going around and scavenging weapons from bodies, and just like it's a complete like the main character, who's played by James Colburn, who does an amazing job of Steiner. He's completely disillusioned, and opposite him is this like grandiose like SS type wannabe who is just taking credit for everything Steiner does, and is just obsessed with getting that Iron Cross. And but he doesn't show any bravery through the whole thing. And James Colburn has an Iron Cross, but he doesn't even care about it because he doesn't care about the war anymore. And there's some seriously brutal scenes in it. There's scenes of compassion, but the compassion gets cut down by the unforgiving, cold, ruthless nature of war. And it's also got one of the most nihilistic endings I've ever seen, and I personally love the ending. Apparently it was rushed and it was not the original ending that was intended, but personally I thought it fit the tone of the film perfectly. It reminds me of that quote from Old Boy where it's like, laugh and the world laughs with you, cry and you cry alone, in terms of responding to tragedy and whatnot. But Peckinpah was a very, very disturbed individual, and I think his art being misunderstood was just that final straw, you could say, that broke the dog's back. Oh god, that was terrible. But I personally think he was like Ernest Hemingway in that he took tremendous risks. He did whatever the fuck he wanted, wrote about and filmed these experiences he had, and tried to translate them in a way that other people could digest, but he just didn't get the reaction he was looking for, and it just caused him to sort of mentally spiral, along with the heavy-duty alcoholism, and cocaine use, especially getting into cocaine in his like 50s, But he's one of my favorite filmmakers. His films are so unique that you can't forget that style. You can't mistake the style of a Peckinpah film. And yes, bullet ballet is the perfect way of describing those violent shootouts he has, but yeah, like, he depicts very stark realities. And as for the misogyny in his films, I think it's like I say with so many other like movies where awful characters do awful things and then people criticize it. It's like Deadwood. You know, they'll say racist shit, but the racist shit doesn't mean anything to you. It just says to you that this is an awful person. And that's what I think is happening with the misogyny in his films. It's not him just being like, you know, fucking I hate women and therefore I'm going to abuse them and make them look like harlots on screen. You know, the actresses who worked with him seem to have reverence for him. Like the woman in Straw Dogs, I've listened to her interviews and she seems to have nothing wrong with, you know, having to go through this like insanely brutal and like vile rape scene. But and like someone I believe called it like fascist propaganda. I don't see how that's the case, because like, you know, I think just people go in to any sort of violent film because of exploitation stuff like, you know, Gallo Horror or, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's all about the blood, the violence, the screaming. You know, that's why people show up. So people, I think, got it in their head, this programming that, oh, the violence is good. Violence in movies is cool. You know, and there is, I think, some merit to that because it's like a cathartic release. I think if you're able to get that from a movie or a video game. But that's not what Peckinpah intended, and he strived to try and tell that to people over and over and over again. And then it had jaded him to the point where I think he just stopped caring. And he knew that, you know, he was just going to go broke if he stopped making, you know, these shoot 'em up type films. But he never lost that motivation to depict these things in a way that was just hideous and grotesque. And so that's why I think, you know, Peckinpah was truly a master of film, and a tragic character, a very sad, lonely, confused, disenchanted man. And I hope wherever he's gone, he's found peace, just like Ernest Hemingway. You know, there's Ernest Hemingway. You know, he it's been shown through scientific studies in his grandchildren that, you know, his family has a kind of iron deficiency that kicks in around the age of 50 that makes them very depressed and suicidal. And, you know, sadly enough, the only footage I've seen of Ernest Hemingway is him after he underwent many electroshock therapy sessions. And this was after he had, like, you know, been in 2 plane crashes and had, you know, his leg almost blown off in World War I, and just all this crazy shit happened to him. And plus, you know, hardcore alcoholic too. And, you know, he's essentially reading from a prompter and he can barely do so, which is sad. There are interviews with Peckinpah and they're always entertaining because he's always drinking and just getting rowdy. And he looks like such a mild-mannered man before he starts talking. Yeah, like, I personally, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. Are his movies the most profound thing ever? No. But they are enough to make me think and to question, and certainly enough to rouse opinions from a lot of other people who, you know, found his work quite divisive. But yeah, on that note, I would recommend, if you're going to watch Peckinpah, and you want to see something that's not completely like like you're wincing and just like having to watch it with like one eye half open, like, oh god, this is really happening. I'd say watch The Wild Bunch. I would say The Getaway is also a good one. It's a more commercial film, that's for sure, but Steve McQueen, terrific in it. He slaps the shit out of Ally McGraw in one scene, but I mean, the two of them were having an affair the entire time, and I think ended up getting married, so didn't seem to put much of a dent on their relationship. And plus, I like the score, even though it's not the original score, but Quincy Jones did this like really great, trippy, kind of funky score. Yeah, I would recommend Cross of Iron, but it's a very long movie. It's not for everyone, I would think. You know, you're listening to just bombs go off, machine gun fire the entire time, and but it's very, very good. And Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia is, I mean, I would say it's probably my favorite out of all of them, but it's definitely not for everyone, because it pulls no punches in how unflinchingly brutal it is. Like, brutal. I'd say Straw Dogs is probably his most, and again, I haven't seen all his movies, I would say it's his feels like his most sort of professional, and what's the word I'm looking for, ruminative, sort of case study of the, like, machismo and, you know, undisciplined sexual impulse, and, you know, the exploitation of women as objects of sex, and then just the reactionary nature of human violence, I think. But it's, again, a very hard movie to watch. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia also has a similar type rape scene in it, but there's different implications in that. I think it's the individual who's being raped is letting it happen, not because she wants it to happen, but because it's the only way she knows that she'll stay alive in that scene. And it's weird because they have Chris Christopherson playing the guy who's doing it to her, so I never expected to see him in a role like that. Yeah. And Warren Oates is just, like, he's a one-man storm in that. Just like there's a scene in it where he gets crabs from sleeping with his prostitute girlfriend, and all he does is dump tequila on his crotch. Like, and it turns out that's his obvious solution for most things. Like, he's got the rotting head beside him, and he's like pouring tequila on it to keep the flies away. Oh man, I mean, Peckinpah was so ahead of his time. I mean, but you couldn't release movies like that today. And it would just be way too controversial. And I see so many elements in Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds, which was a film I really enjoyed. You know, I'm not a big fan of him rewriting history, but that was an enjoyable film to me. I see more influence from Cross of Iron in that movie than any other movie I've kind of seen. And I know Tarantino's a big movie buff, so I'm sure if someone was to ask him, he would say yes, that was definitely an influence. But yeah, anyways, I think Peckinpah rules, and I think there is like a poetry, and there's like his stuff is art. Like I've heard he's made some movies that are kind of bad and like incomprehensible, but what I've seen, the movies I just listed, are, to me, they speak volumes, and I think they are all very unique and memorable. And again, you know, he has this style that is just so distinct and unmistakable that, you know, you can't help but go, this is a Peckinpah film. But yeah, you're just FYI, sexual assault happens a lot. Women get straight up clocked a lot. innocent women, children get shot. You see collateral damage of shootouts. You see the horrors of war. You see people at their worst. So if that's not your kind of thing, then I would not recommend it. I recommend his filmography to you, but if you care about learning why humans become corrupted, particularly men, and develop this rotten, evil sense of possessive ownership over everything, everyone around them, particularly women, and to the point of doing anything, no matter how barbaric, to maintain it, is I think he does just a beyond excellent job of that. And of that, yeah, big fan. I've got The Getaway, I've got Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, I've got The Wild Bunch in my collection. As I said, I would have got Straw Dogs, but I mean, it's just not a movie I can watch with friends. I showed friends the siege scene, and they all thought it was pretty fucking badass. Pretty into violent but badass. And also Straw Dogs is, the only film I've seen of him that doesn't have a fuckload of shootouts. I believe there's a couple shots fired from double-barrel shotguns in it, but that's about it. When the siege happens, it's improvised weapons that are being used, and I thought that was pretty creative. And also Straw Dogs, it's in the title, what he's trying to say, because Straw Dogs were these effigies that they would make in ancient China just to be thrown away, something made to be disposable. And whether he's referring to women or just human lives in general, and then when viewed through the lens of some sadistic, fucking male aggressor with just insatiable sexual appetite, I'm not sure. I'd say it's probably referring to all the people in the movie, because life becomes very indispensable. Yeah, but anyways, I'll leave it at that. Bye.